Hi guys, Eva here, and today I am going to do my June 2018 wrap-up. I also want to mention the fact that I'm gonna go on holiday for 6 weeks, so probably I won't do a July wrap-up. I'll just do a wrap-up when I come back at the end of August. But I do have a couple of videos going up that I pre-filmed and are all about my favorite graphic novels series, completed and still ongoing, so look out for that. So before I start, I'll give you some statistics. And so this month I read a total of 10 things, which is awesome considering my reading year so far. And 7 were books and 3 were graphic novels. Considering just the books and the amount of pages that I read was 2,449. And as far as the genre goes, 3 books were fantasy, 4 books were urban fantasy, 1 book was literary fiction, and 2 books were horror/crime. And as far as the rating goes, 1 book was 3.5 stars, 1 book was 3.75 stars, 3 books were 4 stars, 3 books were 4.25 stars, 1 book was 4.75 stars, and 1 book was 5 stars. The thing I've read this month was The Hazelwood by Melissa Albert, and this is about this girl that all her life has been traveling around USA with her mom, because every time they stop in a city for more than a few weeks, bad things start to happen and they have to flee anyway. And she is the granddaughter of this famous author that wrote this book all concerning twisted fables, but she never met actually this famous grandmother because she has been living in the Hazelwood, this private mansion, and she never went out of this mansion, and the mother had a really bad relationship with her, so she never brought her to meet the grandmother, so they never met. And one day the mother gets kidnapped, and the girl has to realize that as weird as it can seem, the fables that her grandmother wrote about can be actually based on truth. Personally, I consider this book urban fantasy, and I did enjoy it overall. I never read something based on fables, especially twisted fables, which kind of gave me the vibes of the real Grimm fables, the original one before they were edited and made them in the Disney movie we all know, and the famous fables we all know. I loved the premise. I love these dark twisted fables and this dark twisted world. I was like really curious to know what was gonna happen, so I read this very quickly. However, I have to say that I found the piece of this book quite weird. I mean, for the first half of it I was waiting for something to happen, and then I did like the second part maybe a little bit more. It was just a weird piece. I gave this book 3.75 stars. It was a standalone. The characters were okay. I don't want to spoil anything, but I did find some of the characters' choices in the end a little bit weird. I did appreciate them because I didn't see them coming, but they felt a little bit like, what? That's not what I was expecting. They felt a little bit out of character, just a little bit, which was not necessarily too bad, but, and I will read more by her. It was a solid debut novel, but it's weird. So I'm a little bit on the, I'm not sure about this. The second thing that I actually read this month was iZombie, and this is volume 3. And 3 or 4 volumes. So this volume, I'll show you some of the art. This is by Chris Robertson and Michael Allerde. There is a TV show, so maybe you're familiar with that, and the premise is pretty much the same, although the TV show is quite different than the actual graphic novel. But the premise is that Gwen dies and she wakes up as a zombie, and in order for her to maintain her memories, she has to eat brains. I really enjoyed this. I gave this 4.25 stars. The dead president chapters, just I love this graphic novel. It's my jam, just my genre. I loved everything from the art, the plot, everything. And I will talk about the series in my completed graphic novel series that I've read that's coming up soon. Then I've read Magic Burns. This is the second book in the Kate Daniels series, and this is by Ilona Andrews, which are actually 2-person husband and wife, if I'm not mistaken. It's an urban fantasy about Kate. Kate is a mercenary in Atlanta, and the thing is that when magic is up, technology doesn't work. She takes care of supernatural creatures that step out the line. I did like this book slightly less than the first one. I felt it was a little bit more slow, less happened. overall, but I still think this is a really good series. If you like urban fantasy, I will continue with the series. Also, she is really tough, kick-ass female character that doesn't need any help to be rescued, doesn't need any guy to rescue her. So I appreciate the fact that she can handle herself. Then I've read iZombie Volume 4, final volume, 4.25 stars. The conclusion, I didn't see it coming. I had no idea it would have gone that way. But I appreciated it. I love this series overall. So yeah, as I said, I'll talk more about this in another video. I've read The Dinner by Herman Koch, and he's Dutch. He's a Dutch author. And this book, the premise is that you follow these two families that meet one night at dinner to discuss what their sons did. I don't want to spoil absolutely anything, so that's all I'm gonna say about the plot. So I had some issue with this book as many things were not answered and some things didn't make actually sense. If you don't want any spoiler and you're really sensible to spoiler or anything, maybe skip this part. I will cross my fingers so you can mute until I uncross my fingers, and I won't say anything about the plot whatsoever or the characters, but it can be considered a spoiler, so be aware of that. And I'm crossing my fingers. The thing that this book does is that you follow this point of view of one of the guys at the dinner, and all of a sudden, after a good while, you realize that this book has turned everything over. So you usually are supposed, to read from the good guy point of view, or if it's so explicitly said, from the bad guy point of view. And here you think you are following like one kind of guy, and then this book turns everything over. Not only the point of view that you are actually talking about, everything turns over. Gave this 3.75 stars. Did read this really quickly because it just kept me at the edge of my seat. It's not the best thing ever, and it's not about the real plot twist. It's more about the twisted story itself, the twisted characters itself. So I did appreciate what he did. I think he did it quite well. Then I read The Devil of Nanking by Mo Hyder. Now, this book destroyed me. This is one of the books that I will never forget all my life. I'll give you the premise. The premise is that this girl, all her life, has been obsessed with the Nanking massacre that happened in China in 1937. When she's little, she found this document or this book where it says that there is actually a video about a special torture that went on during the massacre, and she's obsessed with finding this video. So when she grew up, she goes to Tokyo because she has a hint that someone there has this video. But this guy that has the video says, I will show you the video only if you help me understand what kind of cure this boss of a Yakuza takes in order to stay alive, because he's really old and sick, and he still lives because he takes this special medicine. And I want to know what's the main ingredient. So she accepts to do that. Chaos ensue and so on. Now this is a crime horror story, and at the same time I think she's genius, but at the same time I wish I never read this book. So many trigger warnings for this. I think it touches a really sensible topic, especially because personally I had in my ignorance, because we don't really study any kind of Oriental history, I didn't know that Nanking and the massacre of Nanking was actually a fact that actually happened, and you can go online and find the pictures, which are horrible. One thing that I appreciated about this book is that on one side, at one point, this guy says, I justify them and their actions because they were based on ignorance. And, you can not really be mad with someone who does wrong because he's ignorant. Something that I have to deal with in my studies, like, is ignorance a justification to do wrong? How responsible can someone be when he's ignorant of what he's doing and he has no idea what he's doing? But at the same time, this book, after all happens, it says some things you cannot justify by saying, oh, they were ignorant. And if you actually, as I did, went online and looked at the massacre, and I'm gonna read way more about it, you cannot really justify them just saying, oh, they were ignorant, they were just following orders. They raped children and women and animals for 6 weeks. That's not orders. That's not ignorance, that's something else. So the dark aspect of humanity that this book deals with are really, really shocking and in depth, and I think for that reason I loved this book. I mean, loved as much as you can love something so horrible. So it was horrible, but she was doing, I think, what she wanted to do, and I think she explored a really dark part of humanity that not many dare to do. And the end is just, honestly, I cried. I don't cry in books, but I cry like a baby with this book. While reading it, I tried to think about all the horrible things that could happen, more than I was already reading, but I didn't see that one coming, and it was just heartbreaking. So if you are sensible and you don't want to deal with those things, don't read this book, because it's just gonna shock you and leave you scarred. Really, I will never forget this book. I didn't want to rate this book, but in the end I gave probably 4.25 stars. I loved it, and I wished I never read this at the same time. I don't know if it makes sense. After that, I really needed something light and funny, so I read A Destiny of Dragons by TJ Klune. This is the second book, and the first book is The Lightning Struck Heart. I talked about this many times in my channel, and it's a fantasy where in the first book you follow Sam. Sam is the wizard apprentice for the future king of Verania, and he is also in love with Sam, the commander of the royal guards, who is supposed to marry the prince, who is the same future king that Sam will have to work for. And this is so ironic, so full of humor, but it's not for everybody, because it's really sexually aimed humor, full of sexual references, and it can get too much sometimes, but it's also one of the funniest books I've ever read. I love this book slightly less than the first one. I think it's more slow, which the first one was not really quick anyway. It's more about the characters and the humor and the relationship, but this one was a little bit more slow, and it felt a little bit like it was getting us ready for the next book. So we'll keep reading this series. This is one of my favorite series because I just laugh so much. Slightly less funny and slightly less interesting than the first one. Still loved it. I love his humor. I love the fact that he makes fun of a lot of fantasy tropes, and that we have a gay main character. It's amazing, and I gave this 4 stars. Then I read Fables, the deluxe edition. This is volume 11, so I don't have the dust jacket, but I'm sure you don't mind because this is just awesome. And this, I loved this. The premise is all the fables that we know, Snow White, Cinderella, Pinocchio, and so on. They escaped their kingdom because there was this bad guy taking over, basically, and they moved to New York, and now they're so intertwined, and it's just amazing. I'll show you some of the art. This volume I particularly liked. I really enjoyed it. So in the deluxe edition you have many volumes, and some volumes were not the best in the past. I love the series overall, but this one I really like. I gave this 4.75 stars. Just the plot, and also we have some special guests doing the art, which I love, because the normal art style is not my cup of tea, but when these guest artists do it, it's amazing. I've read Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi, and this is about this kingdom where all people able to do magic, the magi, were victim of a purge that the king did around 11 years ago, from where you start reading. And the mom of the protagonist, one of the protagonists, gets killed in this purge. And then 11 years pass, and she is also born with the white hair and clear eyes, which are signs she's a potential magi. But there is no magic until one day, somehow, she ends up in contact with an object that gives her some of her powers back. And for a series of events, she decides to go on this journey and bring magic back in the kingdom. The cast of characters is people of color, and this is a fantasy. Now, ready? Because this is probably an unpopular opinion. Now, I did like this book enough to give it 4 stars. So I think as a debut. It was solid, and I did like especially the epilogue the author made. I couldn't agree more. So I appreciated her as an author a lot, and I appreciated what she did with the story. However, I didn't love this book. I was not like pulling my hair out. It was not one of the best things I've ever read, and it's probably not in my best books of 2018. I didn't love it as much as everybody else did. I think my problem is that when I go out of my TBR and I try to read something that is actually hyped so much, I always end up being kind of disappointed, or most of the times. I did feel like some parts were a little bit rushed. I didn't really, the romance, it's just how it happened so quickly, and I mean, I can see maybe the point of it, maybe, but I didn't really like how it played out. I'm not against instant love. I mean, I'm okay with it. I don't like complain. But in this case, I don't know. The characters were cool, but none of them were like, oh my god, I love you. I was not attached to any of them, and although I liked the story, I just was not eager to get back in the story. I was not eager to finish it. I was just chill. And when I'm chilling, it's good. The story was good, but it means that I don't love the book so much. I don't feel the rush to read it, and I want to read it, and I don't fall in love with the characters, and it didn't happen. The last thing I actually read was Tales of Mystery and Madness. And these are 4 tales from Edgar Allan Poe, but they are illustrated by Grace Grimley. So all this book is illustrated, and I just can really appreciate. I love Edgar Allan Poe. I think it really can creep me out. And with the illustrations, it was just 5-star books. I mean, there is really nothing to say about his awesome book. It's just if you like horror, or if you like Edgar Allan Poe mystery, and if you appreciate Grace Grimley art, this is just a must-have. 5 stars. Just I loved it, and it was the perfect, read it in one night, and it was just the perfect ending of a great reading month overall. I'll see you soon with my favorite completed graphic novel series, and if you're new, I would love for you to subscribe, so hit the button down below. Have a good day, sweet dreams, depending on where you are. See you next time. Thank you for watching. Ciao!